In the ancient hills of Scotland, old folk still speak of the good neighbours and the not-so-good ones. These are old places where stone and stream remember, and where you'd best not walk alone after dark. For this is fairy country. These are the Fae, the hidden folk, and in Celtic lore, the Fae are older than nations, stranger than gods, and far more dangerous. And among their kind, there is a division as old as shadow and light. Two great courts that rule the hidden world, the Seelie Court and the Unseelie Court. Let's uncover the secrets of this fairy aristocracy by referencing the authoritative tome, An Encyclopedia of Fairies by Katharine Briggs, and learn the all-important rules of fairy etiquette that will keep you safe in case you ever meet them. Let's begin with the Seelie Court. These are the fairies you'd hope to meet on a twilight stroll, provided that is, that you mind your manners. The word Seelie comes from Scots, meaning happy, lucky, or blessed. They're associated with light, summer, and daytime, and they're known to help respectful humans. But make no mistake, while they do lean towards kindness, they still play by fairy rules, and not by human ones. So what are those all-important rules you need to know to stay safe? Well, they might bless your home if you leave out cream and bread, or prank you endlessly if you neglect to show them respect. They reward politeness, punish rudeness, and are infamous for seducing mortals into fairy rings with the captivating music they play when partying there. But before you pull out those magic words you learned about as a toddler in order to wow a fairy with your politeness, don't be so sure. Fairies operate by different rules, you see, and please and thank you might not cut it. Let me arm you with knowledge of the rules, my friends, the rules that govern the fairy universe, so that you just might live to tell the tale if you ever come across a member of the Seelie Court. To illustrate my first point, let us imagine the Scottish Kelpie, a charming and handsome fairy lad known to transform into beautiful stallions and drag love-struck young ladies to their doom deep in the depths of his watery abode. Imagine, if you will, that a Kelpie has offered a young man who had been foolishly hiking in the fairy woods a boon. Impressed as he was by his unruffled calm upon unexpectedly encountering him beside the enchanted Kelpie pool. With courteous civility, he had smoothly engaged in a polite conversation, showing both respect and a touch of reverence for his fairy ilk. And given also that Kelpies are only interested in seducing young ladies and dragging them into their watery homes, he decides not to put an end to our young man, but generously, rather to grant him a mysterious and sparkly fairy boon. A gift like only a fairy could give you, of who knows what magical powers. Lovely, right? Oh yes, fairies do love their manners, don't they, he thinks. So, I had better say thank you. Right? Wrong? Our young man just might find himself dragged unceremoniously into his deep, dark Kelpie pool, despite his lack of feminine charms, because to fairies, saying thank you not only isn't polite, it's an insult. The fairies, you see, never do anything for free. They aid you to create a bond, to create a contract, and this transaction they've initiated with you, mortal, is expected to last. Not to be concluded by the words thank you very much, and it is an honor they've given you, as they see it, not something you should feel you deserved. By saying thank you, you seem to be implying, to fairy ears anyways, that you are owed this gift. And by saying thank you, you're concluding the contract, concluding your bond with the fairy and moving on. Both things are offensive to the fairies. Their every gift is an honor, you see, not owed, and a bond is always a part of the deal, not to be broken or concluded in any way ever. Mortal? Got it? So, if you want to express gratitude and not end up with your livestock mysteriously withering away or your hair turning snow white overnight, well, there are a few other ways. A small offering, perhaps, a respectful nod, a compliment whispered like a prayer, but never thanks. Now, with that one survival rule under your belt, if you do ever find yourself in the presence of the Unseelie Court, say at twilight in a meadow that smells a little bit too sweet, there are still more rules to remember, my friends. First off, do not lie. The Fae despise dishonesty, especially when it's clumsy. So if you're going to lie, at least be charming and persuasive about it, okay? Although it will likely do you no good anyways, as they can smell a fib before you even formed it on your lips. But your punishment might be a little less painful if you lie well. Second, never eat their food. That warm honeyed cake, or that mysteriously luminous mug of frothy honey mead, or that tantalizingly tempting red ruby fruit. Yeah, it's not for you. Not for mortals. Eat it, and you may never leave. Or worse, you could leave changed. You are what you eat, after all, and a mouthful of fairy magic can have unpredictable effects. Third, whenever possible, do not give them your real name. Names have power, you see, and fairies are careful not to reveal their real names for that reason. In fairy lore, to speak your true name is to hand over the keys to your very soul. Now, how can I give a fairy an alias without lying, you may ask? Well, saying something like, "All the Kelpies I know call me Chuck," that isn't exactly a lie, is it? After all, how many Kelpies do you know? Saying this, therefore, to Mr. Kelpie is a-okay. And if you do manage to see a procession, a cavalcade of light-footed beings gliding through the hills on moonlit horses, or dancing in a circle with music that stirs your soul to dance, you just might spy the Queen of Elfame, often called by the name Nichiven. She heads the procession, flanked by lesser Fae nobility. Especially on the 4 seasonal shift days, called quarter days, the wind is said to shift, and the veil between the human world and the fairies is said to grow very thin on those days. And so, if you ever find yourself walking in the Scottish Highlands, on the very day between summer and autumn, and a sudden supernatural wind blows off your hat, or if you're met with other warning signs of fairy presence, such as strong perfumes of flowers, sweet and otherworldly music, or mysterious glowing lights, stay hidden. But watch, you might just glimpse some of the court's famed members. There, flitting just above the ring of mushrooms, you might spy the Pixies, mischief makers with dragonfly wings and berry-stained lips, laughing with a sound like wind chimes and knocking over dewdrops just to watch them splash. Don't try to catch them, though. They'll lead you in circles until your boots rot and your sense of direction runs off screaming. Keeping to the edge of the revelry, broad-shouldered and grim-faced, might be a Spriggan. Twisted and gnarled like old tree roots, sometimes mistaken for stones until they move, they're the muscle of the court, guardians of treasure and territory, and will not hesitate to hurl a trespasser clear across the glen. Lounging on a low stone, idly humming a tune that aches in your chest, could be a Leannan Sídhe, the fairy muse. She's as beautiful as she is perilous. If she locks eyes with you, beware. Her inspiration is intoxicating, but draining. Artists she favors tend to burn out in brilliance or madness. She's said to be the very soul of art, the fairy artists who many foolish painters, writers, and poets have cavorted with throughout history, so she may whisper her secrets of the artist's craft into their ears, inspiring them to produce phenomenal artistic triumphs. But as nothing comes free in the fairy world, so they also latch on to the artist's soul and suck it dry. leading the unfortunate tortured artist to madness and an early demise. It is she who dreams up, composes, and often sings and plays the haunting fairy music that you might hear drifting on the wind, luring mortal men to their fairy circles, tempting them to join the party. A party which maybe they'll never be allowed to leave, when once the fairy ale they imbibe magically binds them to the fairy realm, and the seductive fairy folk lure them into an eternal love bond. And just past the firelit clearing, nearly indistinguishable from the shadows under the trees, may stand the Ghillie Dhu, or dark-haired lad in the old tongue, a solitary spirit of the Scottish woods, also called by English folklore Jack in the Green. This leafy wild man, cloaked entirely in moss and leaves and bark tangled through his hair, stands motionless as any tree, his eyes the color of wet stone. You might not notice him at all unless the birches begin to stir when there's no wind, or a hush falls over the forest too suddenly. The Ghillie Dhu is said to be shy, especially of adults, but kind to children. One story tells of a lost girl whom he sheltered throughout the night, guiding her safely home by dawn. But that mercy should never be mistaken for meekness. He is the guardian of the woodland glens, the quiet voice beneath the canopy, the spirit in the green hush of dusk. To mock the trees or trample the ferns in his presence is to gamble with your very life. Not malevolent, not quite, but very old and very powerful. Whether you call him Ghillie Dhu or Jack in the Green, he's not a creature of the revel like the Pixies. He's not a party animal like the fiddling fae, but he does not dance, but he watches. And if the forest does not wish for you to leave, you may not. Presiding over it all naturally is Nuckelavee, the fairy queen of the bright host. Regal and terrifying in equal measure, she rides out first, veiled in thistledown, and crowned with woven moonlight, her procession winding like mist through hill and hollow. She doesn't smile, not often, but when she does, it's the kind of smile that makes trees bow and the wind hush to listen. Her feast, if one appears, is both sumptuous and slightly wrong. Fruits that gleam too brightly, wine that smells like summer storms. But eat and drink at your peril, mortal, for this is no earthly banquet. Every flavor has a cost. Nothing is free with the fairies, remember, and the Seelie, though prettier than their darker cousins, are no less bound by the trickster's code. You've stepped into their world now, after all. But now, let's shift the wind. If you encounter a sudden supernatural gale that freezes the blood one night, round about midnight, you might soon be fated to meet the Unseelie Court, meaning the unholy court in Old Scots. Well, if the Seelie are dangerous but dignified, the Unseelie are just dangerous. These are the beings that seek you out after midnight, and no need to go out of your way to offend them. Your mere existence will do to offend them. Politeness? Useless. Etiquette? Laughable. Say thank you to this lot, and they'll take it as sarcasm, and they might just rip your shadow off. You know, just for fun. So if you choose to foolishly roam the shadowy fairy woods and hills after dark, you may well encounter all manner of fearsome beasties. Take the Redcap for one. Small and gnarled, but don't let that fool you. He's a murderous little creature who haunts old battlements and ruined keeps where the stones remember screams. You'll know him by his blood-soaked cap. Yes, soaked freshly probably, which he must dip often in the blood of his victims to stay alive. His iron boots clank on the stones as he moves faster than you'd think something so squat and tiny ever could. You'll feel him before you see him. The sudden cold, the smell of rust and rot, the sense that something very odd and very wrong is grinning in the shadows just behind you. Then there's a Nuckelavee, the very stuff of sea-slicked nightmares. born from the windswept shores of the Orkney Islands in Scotland. This skinless horror is part man, part horse, and all fury. Imagine a flayed creature with veins like black ropes, a rider fused grotesquely into the beast it rides, its breath toxic, and its hatred of humans as deep as the sea. The only mercy? It fears running water. Should you ever hear a splash behind you on a coastal road and a smell like burning flesh comes on the wind, run for the nearest stream and hope. Not all Unseelie are overtly monstrous. Some, like the Unseelie Court, might even seem laughable, until it's far too late, that is. He wears a cloak of rattling seashells that jangle with every step, giving him a foolish jangling sound. But the Unseelie Court is a trickster, a mocker, a lurer of the unwary. He'll cry out in the voice of someone lost, oh, someone in need. And when you go looking, when your foot slips near the bog, when your hand reaches out for the reeds, that's when he takes you. No one really knows what he wants. He doesn't always kill. Sometimes he just laughs. And that might be worse. And then there are the Sluagh. They're not one creature, but a host. A swirling, shrieking cloud of dead souls, banished even from the afterlife. In folklore, they were said to travel on the western winds, seeking out the dying to steal their final breath, or snatching unsuspecting souls from their beds. Some say they were once fae who broke some ancient law. Others believe they are the spirits of the worst among the dead, too foul for heaven, too wild for hell. Close your windows on stormy nights and never sleep facing west. If you hear wings that aren't quite wings, and voices that aren't quite human, under a dark sky one night as you walk in the fairy hills, don't look up. If you do find yourself alone in their company, I recommend this very scientific strategy. Run. If that fails, well, maybe speak in riddles, pretend to be insane, walk backwards, throw a handful of iron nails behind you, and just pray that you have ancestors watching over you, perhaps, protectively, from the beyond, because, my friends, you'll need them. So, the next time you're walking past the hedgerows at dusk and the wind changes direction without warning, mind your step. The fae may be watching. And if you are lucky enough to survive a fairy encounter unscathed, just nod, leave a bit of honey on a stone, and for the love of all that's green and glowing, do not say thank you. Unless, of course, you're tired of your current reality as a humdrum human being and fancy a little fairy magic-induced involuntary shapeshifting, in which case, be my guest. Now go on. Walk in the Scottish Highlands at twilight on Halloween if you're of a mind to. Do so boldly, in fact, friends, well prepared as you are now, with all the rules of fairy etiquette you need to survive. Just remember, though, if you hear your name called out from the darkness, better not answer, but walk a little faster, perhaps, to the nearest town or safe haven, and never follow the music, but rather turn a deaf ear to it and carry on, no matter how good the party sounds.
Well, that just about wraps up tonight's tale from Lorehound. Join us as we sniff out more of history's most interesting stories.
As the hound dog entered the dimly lit library, he sensed an aura of mystery surrounding the ancient scrolls. The dusty shelves towered above him as he sniffed his way through the labyrinth of books. Suddenly, he picked up a scent and followed it to a secluded corner. With bated breath, he approached the shelf and pawed at the book, revealing the hidden scroll. As he rolled it out, he knew he had discovered a treasure worth protecting at all costs.